The night Victoria Hale lost everything, the snow wouldn't stop falling. From the top floor of her glass tower in Chicago, she watched her empire collapse in real time. Headlines burned across every screen, assets frozen, federal investigations launched, investors vanished. Just hours ago, she had been the youngest self-made billionaire in the Midwest. Now she was branded a fraud. The board forced her out before midnight. As she stepped into the silent marble lobby, heels slipping on melting snow, the last person she expected to catch her was the night janitor. And that was the moment everything changed. The screens in the boardroom had been relentless. Her own face stared back at her from a dozen monitors, framed by words that felt like ice picks to the chest. Tech mogul under investigation. Hale Industries stock plummets 87%. Billions evaporate overnight. Victoria stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching snow swirl 40 stories above Michigan Avenue. The flakes looked like static, like her entire world was breaking down into pixels and disappearing. Behind her, the board members she'd handpicked were taking turns explaining why she had to go. Immediately before the markets open in Asia, "The optics are catastrophic," Gerald Myers said, his voice hollow. She'd made him wealthy. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Shareholders are demanding action," added Patricia Chen, the CFO, who'd once called Victoria a visionary. Victoria's phone buzzed against the glass table. 53 missed calls, her attorney, her publicist, her mother. She ignored them all. Outside, Chicago was turning into a snow globe, beautiful and suffocating. The January wind howled through some invisible gap in the architecture, a high-pitched whistle that sounded like the building itself was screaming. "We need your resignation letter by midnight," Gerald said. "Security will escort you out." She'd built this company from a dorm room idea. 12 years of 18-hour days, 3 successful pivots, 17 acquisitions. Barack Obama had quoted her at a tech summit. And now, because of trading irregularities she didn't authorize and transactions she didn't approve, they wanted her gone in 90 minutes. Victoria turned from the window. The boardroom felt smaller than it had that morning. The walls were closing in, or maybe she was shrinking. For the first time in her adult life, she had no plan, no strategy, no move to make. "I'll be out in an hour," she said quietly. No one argued, no one defended her. They'd already moved on to damage control, discussing press releases and interim leadership. She was a problem being managed, not a person being supported. Victoria gathered her tablet and walked out without another word. The executive floor was empty. Everyone had gone home early, afraid of association. Her assistant's desk was cleared. The motivational posters she'd hung, "Fail fast, learn faster," now felt like cruel jokes. Her corner office looked staged, impersonal, like a museum exhibit of someone else's life. Victoria didn't pack anything. What was the point? The life those objects represented no longer existed. She grabbed her coat and walked to the elevator. The descent from the 40th floor to the lobby felt longer than it should have. Her ears popped. Her reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman she barely recognized. Hair perfect, suit immaculate, eyes completely hollow. The elevator chimed. The doors opened onto the grand marble lobby she designed herself. Minimalist, powerful, cold. The floor was slick with melted snow, tracked in by the last employees leaving for the night. Victoria stepped out carefully, but her heel caught a patch of water and she felt herself tilting, falling, the ground rushing up to meet her. A hand caught her elbow. Firm, steady. She looked up into the face of a tall black man in a gray maintenance uniform, a mop bucket on wheels beside him. "Easy there," he said. Victoria straightened, pulling her arm back instinctively. "I'm fine." The janitor didn't argue. He just held her gaze for a moment. Not with pity, not with judgment, just acknowledgement. A black man standing steady in a lobby built for people who looked nothing like him, like her board, like the faces in the framed leadership photos upstairs. Then he went back to mopping, pushing the water toward a drain in deliberate, practiced strokes, his dark brown hands steady on the mop handle. She should have walked away, called her driver, disappeared into the storm. But something about that moment, the steadiness of his hands, the quiet competence, the complete absence of recognition in his eyes, made her stop. Through the glass walls, she could see the snow coming down harder. The streets were empty. The city looked abandoned, frozen in place, and for the first time that day, Victoria Hale felt the full weight of what had just happened. She had nowhere to go. Ethan Cole, a black single dad in his late 30s, had been cleaning office buildings for 3 years. He knew the rhythm of corporate crisis, the hurried exits, the boxes carried out after hours, the way executives stopped seeing service workers entirely when their worlds were falling apart. He'd expected this woman to brush past him, phone pressed to her ear, already moving on to whatever came next. Instead, she just stood there. He kept mopping, giving her space. The TV mounted in the lobby was playing the news with the sound off. He could see her face on the screen split with another shot of federal agents entering a building. The chyron read, "Disgraced CEO forced out." "Headlines aren't always the truth," Ethan said, wringing out his mop. Victoria's head snapped toward him. Her expression shifted from blank shock to something sharper. "Excuse me? The news, they're already calling you guilty. They haven't even investigated yet." "You wouldn't understand," she said, her voice cold, controlled, the voice of someone used to ending conversations. Ethan shrugged, pushing the bucket toward the next section of floor. "Maybe not billions, but I understand losing everything." He didn't elaborate, didn't need to. The lobby fell quiet except for the sound of water sloshing and the distant howl of wind. Victoria stood frozen, her expensive coat buttoned to her throat, her breath visible in the drafty space. "It's going to be a bad one tonight," Ethan continued, nodding toward the windows. "They're saying 10 inches by morning. Roads are already a mess." "I don't care about the weather. You will when you try to get home." Victoria pulled out her phone. No signal. The storm must be interfering with the tower. She walked toward the front doors, heels clicking sharply on marble, and pushed outside into the blast of snow and wind. It hit her like a physical force, stealing her breath. The cold was shocking, painful. She retreated back inside, snow dusting her shoulders. Ethan had moved to the security desk, wiping down the granite counter. "Like I said, bad one. My driver probably turned around. Smart people aren't on the roads right now." Victoria felt something crack inside her chest, the last thread of control she had been holding. She walked to one of the modernist benches, more art installation than furniture, and sat down heavily. The marble was cold, even through her wool coat. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Ethan worked methodically, moving through his routine with practiced efficiency. Victoria watched him in her peripheral vision. He was probably late 30s, maybe 40. He had a lean build. There was something deliberate about the way he moved, like a man who had learned to waste no motion. The TV screen changed to a financial analyst explaining the collapse. Victoria watched her life being dissected by strangers. They were talking about her like she was not a person, just a data point in a market correction. She saw her own face flash again, a photo from last year's shareholders meeting where she had been laughing at something the CFO said. She looked confident, untouchable. That woman felt like a stranger now. "They can't hurt you worse than you're already hurt," Ethan said quietly, not looking up from his work. "You have no idea what they can do." "True, but I know what you can survive." He paused, then added, "Most people think rock bottom is the end. It's not, it's just the first day of something different." Victoria turned to look at him directly for the first time. Really look. There were lines around his eyes, the kind that came from stress, not age. His hands were rough, scarred, but his voice was educated. His phrasing was too precise for the job he was doing. "Who are you?" she asked. "Ethan Cole, night maintenance, building 3 through 7. He offered a slight smile. "And before you ask, yeah, I know who you are, but that's not why I'm talking to you." "Then why?" "Because 3 years ago, I was sitting where you're sitting. Different building, same look on my face. And someone told me something I didn't want to hear." He met her eyes. "You're still here, that means something." The simple observation hit harder than any of the board's accusations. Victoria felt her throat tighten. She looked away, back toward the storm, blinking hard. "What did they tell you?" she asked quietly. Ethan finished wiping the desk and leaned against it, arms crossed, his dark brown forearms catching the lobby's harsh light. "They told me my son didn't care what I lost. He cared that I showed up." Victoria nodded slowly, not trusting herself to speak. Outside, the wind drove snow against the glass in waves, making the entire lobby feel like it was underwater. Somewhere in the building, a pipe creaked. The storm was settling in for the night, and so, apparently, was she. Ethan pulled a folding chair from the security closet and set it across from the bench where Victoria sat. He lowered himself into it with a slight wince. Old back injury. The building's heating system hummed in the background, fighting a losing battle against the cold seeping through the glass walls. "You don't have to tell me anything," Victoria said. I don't need a pep talk." "Good. I wasn't planning on giving one." Ethan leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. But we're both stuck here until this storm passes. Might as well talk. Victoria considered leaving, finding somewhere else to wait. But the lobby was warm, and the idea of going back out into that wind made her bones ache. She pulled her coat tighter. 3 years ago, Ethan began, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. I had a different life. Mechanical engineering degree from Illinois Tech, a good job at an aerospace firm, a wife named Rachel. We just found out she was pregnant. He paused, looking past Victoria toward the windows, but his eyes were seeing something else entirely. December 19th. She was driving home from her parents' place. Black ice on the Kennedy Expressway. An SUV lost control and crossed the median. He said it the way someone recites facts they have repeated too many times to feel anymore. She was 8 months pregnant. They did an emergency cesarean. The baby was fine, Rachel didn't make it. Victoria felt the air leave her lungs. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Ethan rubbed his jaw, a gesture that seemed automatic. Hospital bills came first. Even with insurance, the NICU stay, the surgery, the funeral, it added up fast. Then I found out Rachel had co-signed for her brother's business loan. He defaulted, I was liable, lost the house in 6 months. You couldn't fight it? Could have. Didn't have the energy. I had a 2-month-old baby who wouldn't stop crying and a job I couldn't focus on. Made mistakes, got let go. By February, I was sleeping in my car with my son Marcus in a parking garage, running the engine for heat in 10-minute intervals so we didn't freeze. Victoria had thought she understood loss, the collapse of her company, the betrayal of her board, the destruction of her reputation. But this was different. This was a black man who had lost everything that actually mattered and was still somehow standing. How did you... she started, then stopped, unsure what she was even asking. Survive? Ethan replied. Honestly, most days I didn't think I would, but every morning I'd look at my son Marcus and he'd smile at me. It didn't matter that we were homeless. It didn't matter that I was washing him with bottled water in a gas station bathroom. He just cared that I was there. He stood up, walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the falling snow. Eventually, I found a shelter that took fathers with kids. Got a stable bed, took this job because the hours worked, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., so I could be with Marcus during the day. Found daycare that opened early, started rebuilding. Just like that? Not just like that. It took 2 years before I felt human again, 3 before I stopped waking up expecting to find her next to me. He turned back to Victoria. But here's what I learned. You can lose your job, your house, your savings, your reputation, all of it, and you're still you. The skills that got you there the first time don't disappear. They're just frozen, waiting for you to thaw them out. Victoria absorbed this in silence. The comparison was humbling. She'd lost her company, her money, her status. But she hadn't lost a person. She hadn't lost what this man had lost. And yet he was standing here working a night shift, raising a son, functioning while she was falling apart over money and reputation. Your son, she said. How old is he now? 3.5. Smart as hell, obsessed with trains. Ethan's whole demeanor changed when he talked about Marcus. His shoulders relaxed, his voice softened. He doesn't know what I used to be. To him, I'm just dad. The guy with the deep brown hands who makes grilled cheese and does train sounds. Do you regret it? Losing your career? Ethan considered this. Some days, yeah, I loved that work, designing components, solving problems. But I got something else instead. Time with my kid that most fathers miss. He knows me, really knows me. That's not nothing. Victoria stood and joined him at the window. The city beyond was barely visible now, just white sheets of snow and the occasional blur of headlights moving at walking speed. She caught sight of her own reflection, designer coat, pearls, perfect hair. She looked like a woman playing dress-up as someone important. They can freeze your accounts, Ethan said quietly, still looking at the storm. They can freeze your stock, your assets, your access, but they can't freeze your skills. What's in your head, what you know how to build, that's yours. No court order can touch it. Victoria turned to look at him. That's the second time you've referenced freezing. The weather metaphor is a bit heavy-handed. For the first time, Ethan laughed. Yeah, all right, but it's true. Winter doesn't last forever. This storm will pass. Your storm will too. Question is what you do while you're in it. She wanted to argue, to tell him it was different, that he didn't understand the complexity of her situation, the legal ramifications, the federal investigation. But standing there in the empty lobby with snow piling against the doors, those differences felt smaller than they had an hour ago. I don't know how to be anything except a CEO, Victoria admitted. Then I guess you're about to find out who you are underneath the title. Victoria walked back to the bench and sat down, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the board meeting was gone, leaving only a hollow ache. She pulled out her phone, still no signal. Good, she didn't want to talk to anyone anyway. If I'm not a CEO, she said, more to herself than Ethan, who am I? Ethan dragged his chair closer and sat back down. That's the question, isn't it? Took me a year to figure out I wasn't an engineer anymore. Had to become something else. Father, night worker, guy who knows which diaper brand doesn't leak at 3 a.m. He smiled slightly, not glamorous, but real. Victoria's phone buzzed, a notification, finally breaking through. She glanced at it. Her bank had sent an automated message. Your account access has been restricted pending investigation. She stared at the words until they blurred. They froze it, she said flatly. Expected that intellectually, but seeing it is different. She opened her banking app, read error messages across every account, checking, savings, investment portfolios, even her personal credit cards, all locked. I have $200 in my wallet. That's it. That's all I can access. $200 is more than I had. I had 37 and a baby. The comparison should have felt dismissive, but somehow it grounded her. Victoria set her phone face down on the bench. My attorney is going to call. My publicist, my investors. They're all going to want answers I don't have. Then don't answer. Not tonight. That's not how this works. Tonight it is. Tonight you just sit with it. Feel it. Tomorrow you start figuring out the next move. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You know what the worst part was for me? Not the money, not the house. It was looking in the mirror and not recognizing myself. I was Ethan the engineer, Ethan the husband. Suddenly, I was just Ethan, the guy in a shelter. Took me months to realize I'd been confusing my roles with my identity. Victoria understood that more than she wanted to admit. She'd been Victoria Hale, tech founder. Victoria Hale, Forbes cover, Victoria Hale, youngest female billionaire, stripped those away, and what was left? She genuinely didn't know. I built that company from nothing, she said. Dorm room, student loans, 80-hour weeks. It was my whole 20s. I missed weddings, funerals, my sister's graduation, all for this. And now they're saying I'm a fraud. Are you? No. Then prove it. But not tonight. Tonight, you just survive. The simplicity of that directive was almost offensive. Victoria had spent 12 years playing three-dimensional chess with investors and competitors and market forces. Survival felt too basic, too primitive. But maybe that was the point. Maybe she'd been playing the wrong game. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her mother. Just saw the news. Are you safe? Call me. Victoria typed back, I'm fine, and put the phone away. She wasn't fine, but she was safe. That was something. Your friends? Ethan said. The ones you made rich? They reaching out? Victoria laughed, a bitter sound. I've had 53 calls. You want to guess how many were from people asking if I was okay versus people asking how to protect their investments? None to 1, 0 to 53. Ethan nodded like this confirmed something he already knew. Yeah, that's the thing about building an empire. You collect people who love the empire. When it falls, they scatter. But the people who stay, if anyone stays, those are the ones who actually knew you. No one's staying. I'm here. You're paid to be here. I'm paid to mop floors. I'm talking to you for free. He stood and walked to his supply closet, returning with 2 bottles of water and a vending machine granola bar. He handed them to Victoria. Dinner on the house. She accepted them because refusing felt petty. The granola bar was stale, the water room temperature. It was the most honest meal she'd had in years. No wine pairing, no Michelin stars, no servers calling her Miss Hale. Just food, just survival. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm. The wind had a rhythm to it, building and releasing like breath. Victoria ate slowly, tasting nothing, just chewing and swallowing because her body needed fuel. What do I do tomorrow? She asked eventually. Wake up. After that, whatever comes next, 1 hour at a time. You can't plan your comeback when you're still in the collapse. First, you just stop falling. Victoria looked at him, this black janitor in a maintenance uniform who somehow understood her situation better than any of her high-powered contacts. Why are you helping me? Ethan thought about it. Because 3 years ago, a woman named Denise at the shelter didn't have to give me extra time with Marcus during visiting hours. She didn't have to let me use the office phone to call potential employers. She just did. Said she'd been where I was. Different circumstances, same feeling. I told her I'd pay it forward. He met Victoria's eyes. This is me paying it forward. I'm not sure I deserve it. Probably not, but I didn't either. That's how grace works. It shows up when you need it, not when you've earned it. Outside, a snowplow rumbled past, its yellow lights flashing weakly through the whiteout. The blades scraped against asphalt, a harsh metallic sound that echoed in the empty street. Victoria watched it disappear into the storm, pushing snow aside that would be replaced within minutes. Sisyphean work. Pointless. She understood it completely. I'm scared, she said quietly. Good. Means you're still alive. Ethan's phone alarm went off at 11:30, time for his scheduled security sweep of the upper floors. He silenced it and glanced at Victoria, who was staring at the news ticker running across the bottom of the TV screen. More headlines about her, speculation about criminal charges, market impact projections. I need to do my rounds, he said. You're welcome to stay here. Heat's on. Bathrooms on the second floor if you need them. Victoria stood. I'll come with you. I can't look at that screen anymore. They took the elevator to the 10th floor. The executive level had been sealed off by security, so Ethan worked his way down from the top accessible floor. He moved through each space, methodically checking windows, adjusting thermostats, emptying trash bins that were already mostly empty. Victoria followed, her heels clicking on the tile, echoing in the vacant offices. You're very systematic, she observed. Engineering training, process matters. You said you went to Illinois Tech. What was your focus? Aerospace structural analysis, stress calculations, failure point predictions, basically figuring out how much force something can take before it breaks. Victoria stopped walking. That's not a janitor's background. No, but it's a janitor's current reality. Ethan finished checking an office and moved to the next. Knowledge doesn't disappear just because you're not using it. I still think like an engineer. I just apply it to different problems now. Like what? He gestured around the floor. Building systems, heating efficiency, water pressure issues. Last month, I diagnosed a ventilation problem that the maintenance company had been chasing for weeks. Saved the property manager 15 grand. Did they pay you for that? Gave me a $50 gift card to Starbucks. Victoria felt a flash of anger on his behalf. That's insulting. You saved them $15,000. Ethan shrugged. Wasn't doing it for money. Did it because the problem bothered me? That's the thing about being an engineer. You see systems, you see inefficiencies, you can't help but want to fix them. They continued through the floor. Victoria found herself watching how Ethan worked, the economy of motion, the attention to detail, the quiet competence. It reminded her of her own early days coding, lost in problems that only she seemed to see. Can I ask you something? Ethan said, emptying a recycling bin. Sure. This company, this collapse, you really didn't see it coming? Victoria bristled automatically, then stopped herself. The question wasn't accusatory, it was analytical. No, the trading irregularities started 6 weeks ago. Small enough that our compliance team flagged them but didn't escalate, then they accelerated. By the time I saw the pattern, the SEC was already investigating. But you're the CEO. Doesn't everything flow through you? Should. But when you have 8,000 employees across 14 countries, you have to delegate. I had a CFO, a compliance officer, a trading desk full of people I trusted. She paused. I was wrong to trust them. Ethan pushed his cart to the next office suite. Or you were right to trust them and someone betrayed that trust. There's a difference. The end result is the same maybe, but the recovery is different. If you failed, you learn from failure. If you were betrayed, you learn to build better systems. He looked at her. Which one is it? Victoria thought about the timeline, the unusual trading patterns, the timing of the investigation, the speed with which the board had turned on her. I think I was set up. That's a big claim, I know, but look at it systemically. Someone had to initiate those trades. Someone had to time them precisely to trigger SEC attention. Someone had to ensure the board learned about it before I could investigate internally. She felt her mind engaging finally after hours of shutdown. Ethan nodded slowly. So the question becomes, who benefits? Exactly. They reached the end of the hallway. Through the window, the city was invisible under the storm. But in the reflection, Victoria could see herself standing straighter, eyes sharper. The shock was wearing off. The engineer in Ethan had activated the builder in her. I need to see the trading data, she said. Don't you have access? Had, past tense, but I backed everything up to a private server. It's at my apartment. The apartment you can't get to because of the storm, right? Victoria pulled out her phone. Still no signal. And even if I could, they might have frozen access to my devices by now. Ethan wheeled his cart toward the elevator. What if you didn't need your device? What if you just needed the data architecture? Could you reconstruct the pattern from memory? Maybe parts of it, but I'd need something to write on, something to chart the timeline. They rode the elevator back down to the lobby. Ethan pushed his cart to the security desk and pulled out a rolling whiteboard from the storage closet, the kind used for presentations. He found a box of dry erase markers and handed them to Victoria. Not exactly high-tech, he said, but it's something. Victoria took the markers. She stared at the blank board. For the first time in hours, she felt something other than despair. She felt purpose. All right, she said, let's figure out who destroyed my company. They worked on the floor. The whiteboard wasn't tall enough to stand, so Ethan lowered it to ground level. Victoria sat cross-legged on the marble, her designer coat shed and draped over the bench. Working in her silk blouse and wool slacks, she started sketching a timeline. The first irregular trade was January 3rd, she said, writing the date. A block sale of company stock, 2 million shares below market value. Who authorized it? According to the system, I did. But I was in Tokyo that day, signed approval remotely. Ethan sat across from her, legs crossed, watching her work. Digital signature, yes, which means someone either had my password or spoofed my credentials. Your CFO would have those credentials. Patricia Chen, maybe, but she'd also know the forensics would trace back to her immediately. Victoria drew a second line. January 7th, another block sale, 3 million shares, same pattern. I was in London, signed remotely. So, someone knew your travel schedule. Everyone knew my travel schedule. It was public, investor meetings, conferences. I was out of the country 12 days in December, 9 days in January. Ethan leaned forward, but not everyone knew which days you'd be approving transactions remotely versus in person. That's internal information. Finance team would know. Executive assistants, maybe IT. She started listing names. She wrote them out. Patricia Chen, CFO. David Rosenberg, Chief Compliance Officer. 3 executive assistants. The head of IT security. 8 people total, all of whom she'd trusted completely. Any of them have motive? Ethan asked. Define motive. Money. They were all well compensated. Power. They already had significant authority. What about outside the company? Who benefits if Hale Industries collapses? Victoria sat back, thinking. Competitors. We were dominating 3 major markets: cloud infrastructure, AI development platforms, enterprise security. A dozen companies would benefit if we went under. Could they get to someone inside your organization with enough money? Probably. Ethan stood and walked to the windows, hands in his pockets, his reflection, a black man in a building that had never been built for people like him, layered over the storm. The snow was still coming down, maybe even harder than before. The streets were buried under drifts that reached the parking meters. Here's what I don't get. If someone wanted to destroy you, why not just embezzle? Why set up this elaborate trading scheme? Because embezzlement can be isolated. One bad actor contained damage, but market manipulation, trading irregularities that implicates the entire leadership structure. It forces a complete teardown, which means whoever did this didn't just want to steal, they wanted to destroy. Victoria felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Personal vendetta or business elimination, hostile takeover. She stood and grabbed her phone, frustrated again by the lack of signal. I need to see who's been buying our stock during the collapse. If someone's accumulating shares while the price tanks, they'd have controlling interest for pennies on the dollar. Exactly. Ethan walked back to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker and drew a flowchart, boxes and arrows showing potential paths from initial trade to board removal to stock acquisition. His hand moved with practiced confidence, the kind that came from years of drafting and diagramming. Within minutes, he'd created a structural map of a corporate coup. Your CFO reports to the board, he said, tapping the marker on Patricia's name. If she's compromised, who on the board would know? The audit committee. Gerald Myers chairs it. Same Gerald who led the charge to force you out tonight. Victoria felt something click into place. He pushed hardest, wanted me gone immediately. Didn't want to wait for investigation results. Because investigation results might clear you. Ethan drew another arrow. If Gerald is part of this, he'd want you removed before you could defend yourself. Once you're out, the narrative becomes disgraced CEO, and any defense you mount sounds like desperation. But Gerald has been with me from the start. Series A investor. He believed in the company when no one else did. People change, or maybe he didn't change. Maybe he was always planning this. Patient predator, wait until the company is valuable enough, then take it. Victoria looked at the diagram Ethan had drawn. It was frighteningly plausible, a long con, years in the making. She'd been so focused on building, on growing, on innovating, that she'd never considered someone might be building a trap around her. I sound paranoid, she said. You sound analytical. There's a difference. She sat back down on the floor, suddenly exhausted again. The brief surge of purpose was fading, replaced by the overwhelming scale of what she'd be up against. Even if I'm right, how do I prove it? They have the company, the resources, the lawyers. I have a whiteboard and $200. Ethan sat down across from her. You also have expertise they don't know you'll use. They think you're broken, in hiding, probably drunk in some hotel room. They're not expecting you to fight back. I'm not sure I have the energy to fight back. You do. You just used the last hour building a case. That's not the behavior of someone who's given up. Victoria looked at the whiteboard, at the timeline and names and arrows. It looked like the kind of investigative work she used to do in the early days, piecing together market opportunities, finding patterns in chaos. She'd forgotten she could think like this. Somewhere in the rise to billionaire, she'd delegated the details to others and lost touch with the fundamentals. Help me, she said quietly. Ethan met her eyes. What? Help me investigate this. You see patterns, you think structurally. I need that. I'm a janitor, Victoria. I push a mop. I'm not a forensic analyst. You are an aerospace engineer who analyzes structural failures. This is the same thing, just applied to corporate structure instead of airplane wings. Please. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. The building creaked. Finally, he extended his hand. Okay, but I'm not doing this for you. Then who? For every person who ever got destroyed by someone more powerful and didn't have the resources to fight back. For my wife who died while her brother's creditors came after me. For everyone who got screwed by a system that protects the people at the top. He held her gaze. I'm doing this because I want to see the powerful held accountable for once. Victoria took his hand and shook it. His grip was firm, calloused, real. They had an alliance, unlikely, unequal, unstoppable. They worked through the night. Ethan set a phone timer for his rounds. He still had a job to do, and between sweeps of the building, they reconstructed Victoria's last 6 months. She talked through every major decision, every board meeting, every transaction she could remember. Ethan took notes on cleaning supplies, inventory sheets, the only paper available, organizing information into categories. Around 1 a.m., Victoria's phone finally regained signal. It immediately exploded with notifications, texts, voicemails, emails. She scrolled through them with growing detachment. Anything useful? Ethan asked, returning from his 2 a.m. floor check. My lawyer wants $50,000 as a retainer. My publicist wants to schedule a crisis management session at $3,000 per hour. My accountant says the IRS is freezing additional assets. She set the phone down. Everyone wants money. I don't have to solve problems I didn't create. What about friends? Real ones. Victoria scrolled through her contacts. Hundreds of names, business contacts, investors, conference connections. She couldn't remember the last time she'd called someone just to talk. The last time someone had called her for a reason other than business. I don't think I have friends, she admitted. I have networks. Networks fail, friends don't. Easy to say when you have them. Ethan pulled out his own phone and showed her his contacts. Maybe 30 names. My son's daycare. The guy at the corner store who lets me buy diapers on credit when I'm short. The woman at the shelter who still checks in on Marcus. The maintenance supervisor who gave me this job. That's my network. Small but real. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. Envy maybe, or grief for something she'd never built. She'd been so focused on professional connections that she'd forgotten to build personal ones. And now in her moment of crisis, she was utterly alone. Ethan must have seen it on her face. Hey, you're building one right now. Networks start with one person, right here. Whiteboard and bad coffee and a snowstorm. This is how it begins. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They returned to the investigation. Ethan had found an old laptop in the lost and found, unclaimed for 6 months, which meant it was technically salvage. He booted it up. Basic model, slow but functional. Victoria logged into a backup email account she'd created years ago and rarely used. From there, she accessed a document storage system the investigators probably didn't know about. I've got financial statements, she said, downloading files. They spread papers across the lobby floor, creating a timeline of trades, board meetings, and stock movements. Ethan cross-referenced dates with Victoria's travel calendar. A pattern emerged. Every suspicious trade had been authorized while Victoria was out of the country, always on days when she had scheduled calls with the CFO. Patricia knew exactly when you'd be signing documents remotely, Ethan said. She probably sent you legitimate approvals mixed with fraudulent ones. You're reviewing 20 documents at midnight after a 15-hour flight. You're not going to catch one fake transaction. But my digital signature should require two-factor authentication, unless someone in IT disabled it for efficiency. Happens all the time in corporations. Security versus convenience. Convenience usually wins. Victoria pulled up her IT request history. There, a ticket from November filed by Patricia Chen requesting streamlined approval processes for executive transactions, approved by David Rosenberg, the chief compliance officer. They coordinated this, she said. Looks like it, but why? What's their endgame? Victoria kept digging. She found board meeting minutes from December, a closed session she hadn't been invited to. The topic: leadership succession planning. Her stomach dropped. They were planning this before the trades even started. They were building a case for my removal. Ethan read over her shoulder. Based on what? Erratic behavior, poor judgment, emotional instability. Victoria felt rage building. They manufactured evidence. Every decision I made that they questioned, every strategic pivot they disagreed with, they documented it all as proof of incompetence. While simultaneously undermining you with fraudulent trades, Ethan added, a two-pronged attack. Destroy your credibility internally with the board. Destroy the company's value externally with market manipulation. By the time it all came together, you had no defense. She kept scrolling through documents. Then she found it. A stock purchase agreement dated 3 weeks ago. Gerald Myers and Patricia Chen, along with 3 other board members, had formed an investment group. They'd secured a credit line from a hedge fund, $2 billion, to acquire Hale Industries stock in the event of a market disruption. They're buying the company, Victoria whispered. They tanked the stock price, forced me out, and now they're buying controlling interest for a fraction of what it's worth. Ethan let out a low whistle. That's not just fraud, that's corporate piracy. Victoria felt lightheaded. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. People she'd made wealthy, people she'd trusted, people she'd considered mentors. They'd been planning her destruction for months, maybe years, and she'd never seen it coming. I need to report this to the SEC, she said. With what evidence? Documents you accessed from a personal backup that they'll claim you fabricated. You're already under investigation. This could look like you're deflecting. Then what do I do? Ethan stood and walked to the window. Dawn was maybe 2 hours away, though the sky was still black with storm clouds. You need someone with credibility to verify this independently. Someone who can't be accused of being in your pocket. Like who? Like a forensic accountant who doesn't work for any party involved, or a cybersecurity firm that can trace the digital signatures and prove they were spoofed, someone neutral. That costs money I don't have and time I definitely don't have. They're probably moving to finalize the purchase right now. Ethan turned back to her. Then we need to make noise, loud enough that someone with authority pays attention before it's too late. The media? Risky. They've already painted me as guilty. Going to them now could backfire. Victoria felt the walls closing in again. Every path forward seemed blocked. She had evidence but no credibility. She had truth but no platform. She had rage but no power. And then she remembered something. A card in her wallet. A woman she'd met at a conference 8 months ago. Sarah Brennan, investigative journalist for the Chicago Tribune. They'd talked about corporate accountability, about the way white-collar crime got buried in complexity. Sarah had said, if you ever see something that needs exposing, call me. Victoria had kept the card because Sarah had been real, unimpressed by wealth or status. At the time, she'd thought she'd never need it. Now it might be her only option. She pulled out her wallet and found the card. You trust her? Ethan asked. I trust that she wants the truth, and right now, that's the best I've got. Victoria pulled out her phone and drafted an email. She attached the stock purchase agreement, the IT request timeline, the board minutes. She wrote a single line. They destroyed my company to steal it. I have proof. Will you investigate? She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Now what? Ethan asked. Now we wait for dawn. The snow stopped at 5:47 a.m. Victoria knew because she'd been watching the clock on the lobby wall, watching each minute pass with excruciating slowness. The silence when the wind finally died was startling. After hours of howling, the sudden stillness felt unnatural. Ethan had finished his shift at 6 but stayed. They'd moved from the floor to the benches, backs against the cold marble, papers and notes spread around them like debris from a shipwreck. Victoria's phone was at 3% battery. She turned off everything except email, waiting for Sarah Brennan to respond. You should go home, Victoria said. Daycare doesn't open until 7. Marcus is with my neighbor until then. I've got time. Your neighbor watches him all night. She's a nurse, works nights. I watch her daughter after school. We trade off. Victoria thought about the complexity of that arrangement, the trust required, the mutual dependence. It was so far from her experience of hiring full-time nannies and household staff that it might as well have been a foreign country. That sounds hard, she said. It's efficient, and her daughter and Marcus are good together. They're building a network. He smiled slightly. Starts young. Through the windows, the city was emerging from the whiteout. The snow had stopped, but what it left behind was staggering. Drifts reached halfway up parked cars. The street was invisible under a smooth blanket of white. A few early plows were out, blades scraping, but it would be hours before the roads were passable. Victoria's phone buzzed. Email notification. She grabbed it. Sarah Brennan. Holy, I'm looking at this now. Can you verify authenticity of these documents? Need on-record confirmation before I run anything. Call me. Victoria stood, suddenly energized. She responded. What'd she say? Ethan asked. She wants verification. She's interested. Ethan stood too. That's good, that's a start. Victoria dialed the number on Sarah's card. It rang 3 times, then connected. This is Sarah. It's Victoria Hale. You got my email. I did. And if these documents are authentic, this is one of the biggest corporate fraud stories I've ever seen, but I need to verify. Can you give me access to the original files? They're on a secure server. I can grant you temporary access, but you'd need to move fast. Once they realize I'm investigating back, they'll lock everything down. Send me the credentials. I'll have our tech team pull everything within the hour. But Victoria, I need you to understand. If this goes to print, you're going to be in the center of a firestorm. Federal investigations, lawsuits, media circus. Are you prepared for that? Victoria looked at Ethan. He nodded. I'm already in a firestorm, she said. Might as well be the one who started it. Okay, send me everything you have. I'm calling my editor now. The call ended. Victoria sent the server credentials and her access passwords. She was burning her last bridge, but bridges to nowhere weren't worth preserving. Now we really wait, Ethan said. The sun started to rise around 7. Not a dramatic sunrise. The sky just gradually shifted from black to gray to pale blue, but the light on the snow was blinding, turning the city into a landscape of diamonds. Victoria walked to the window and pressed her hand against the glass. It was cold enough to sting. Behind her, Ethan's phone rang. He answered, spoke quietly, then hung up. I need to go get Marcus, he said. Are you going to be okay here? I don't know where else to go. My apartment is 20 blocks. The roads aren't clear. You could come with me. It's not far. Walking distance. Victoria hesitated. The idea of meeting his son, of intruding on his real life, felt like crossing a line. But staying alone in this lobby felt worse. Are you sure? Yeah, come on. You need real coffee anyway. The vending machine stuff is toxic. They bundled into their coats and stepped outside. The cold hit like a wall, stealing breath. The snow was knee-deep in places. They walked slowly, deliberately, Ethan breaking trail and Victoria following. The city was eerily quiet. A few people were out digging cars from drifts, but mostly it was empty, peaceful, post-apocalyptic. When I was at my lowest, Ethan said as they walked, I used to imagine what it would feel like to just disappear. Drive somewhere no one knew me, start over completely, new name, new life. Why didn't you? Because Marcus deserved better than a father who ran away. And because I realized I wasn't trying to escape my circumstances, I was trying to escape myself. That doesn't work. Wherever you go, you bring yourself with you. They turned a corner. A small apartment building came into view. Old brick, 3 stories, iron fire escapes. Ethan led her to the side entrance and up 2 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled like coffee and something baking. He knocked on a door marked C. A woman in scrubs answered. Late 50s, kind eyes, tired smile. Right on time, she said. He's been asking for you. A small boy appeared behind her, a black child with warm brown skin, tight curls sticking up, wearing dinosaur pajamas. He launched himself at Ethan's legs. Daddy! Ethan scooped him up, and Victoria watched his entire being transform. The careful janitor, the analytical engineer, the wounded widower, all of it melted away, leaving just a black father who'd been away from his son too long. Hey buddy, you have a good night? We made pancakes and Miss Rose read 3 books. 3 whole books? That's a lot. Marcus noticed Victoria for the first time. Who's that? This is my friend Victoria. She's had a hard night. We're going to have some coffee and talk. Can you play trains for a bit? Marcus considered this seriously, then nodded. Okay, but can we go to the park after? The snow looks really good. We'll see. Let's get inside first. They thanked Rose and entered Ethan's apartment. It was small, one bedroom, living room, kitchenette, but it was warm, clean, organized. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A basket of toys sat in the corner. A framed photo of a younger Ethan and a visibly pregnant Rachel, both black and beaming, stood on a shelf beside a picture of newborn Marcus swaddled in a hospital blanket. Books were stacked on every surface. Marcus settled on their floor with a wooden train set. Ethan made coffee in a French press, the ritual slow and deliberate. He handed Victoria a mug. It's not fancy, he said. It's perfect. They sat at a small table by the window. From here, Victoria could see the neighborhood, working class, diverse, alive. People were emerging now, helping each other dig out, sharing shovels. It was so different from her sterile high-rise where she'd lived for 5 years and never learned her neighbors' names. I don't know how to do this, Victoria said quietly so Marcus wouldn't hear. Do what? Survive without the structure. Without the title and the company and the identity I built, I feel like I'm falling and I don't know where the bottom is. Ethan sipped his coffee. The bottom is wherever you decide to stop. For me, it was the day Marcus smiled at me in that parking garage. I realized I could either keep falling or plant my feet, so I planted them. And if I can't find solid ground, then you build it, one decision at a time. You've already started, you investigated, you reached out to a journalist. You're fighting back. That's not falling, that's climbing. Marcus brought over a train. Can you fix this? The wheel is stuck. Ethan took the train and examined it with the same focus he'd applied to the corporate structure investigation. He found the issue, a piece of dust caught in the axle, and cleaned it out. The wheel spun freely. There you go, good as new. Thanks, Daddy. Marcus zoomed the train across the floor, making engine sounds. Victoria watched this exchange and felt something shift inside her. For 12 years, she'd measured success in valuations and market share and revenue growth. But this, a black father fixing a toy for his son while morning light streamed through the window, this was success too. Different, quieter, but no less real. Her phone buzzed. Sarah Brennan. Documents verified. Story runs tomorrow morning. Front page. Brace yourself. Victoria showed Ethan the message. You did it, he said. We did it. I couldn't have pieced this together without you. So what happens now? I don't know. The story might change everything or nothing. But at least the truth is out there. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee, watching Marcus play. Outside, the neighborhood was coming back to life. People reclaiming their city from the storm. Victoria realized she was warmer than she'd been in hours. Not because of the apartment's heat, but because of the presence of people who saw her as human, not as a scandal or a stock price. Thank you, she said to Ethan, for tonight, for this, for not looking away. We don't look away in this neighborhood, he replied. We show up for each other. That's how we survive. Victoria stayed until Marcus's daycare opened at 7:30. She helped Ethan get the boy dressed, watched him pack a lunch of string cheese and crackers and apple slices, observed the morning routine of a single father. It was choreographed chaos, shoes on, coat zipped, backpack checked, but there was love in every gesture. Can Victoria come to the park later? Marcus asked as they prepared to leave. Ethan looked at her. That's up to Victoria. She has some important things to do today. Victoria knelt down to Marcus's level. Maybe another time, but thank you for sharing your trains with me. Marcus hugged her spontaneously, the 3-year-old's enthusiastic embrace. Victoria froze for a second, then hugged him back. When had someone last hugged her without wanting something? After they left for daycare, Victoria sat alone in the apartment. She should go home, face whatever was waiting there, but she wasn't ready yet. Instead, she opened her laptop. Ethan had told her his Wi-Fi password and started working. First, she drafted a statement for Sarah's article. Clear, factual, unemotional. She outlined the fraud, the coordinated attack, the evidence. She didn't play victim, didn't ask for sympathy. She just laid out the facts. Then she started making a list. What came next? She couldn't run Hale Industries anymore. Even if the article cleared her name, that ship had sailed. But she had skills, experience, knowledge. She could build something new, smaller maybe, but hers. Around 9 a.m., her phone rang, her attorney finally getting through. Victoria, where the hell have you been? I've been trying to reach you all night. I was busy. What's the status? The SEC is expanding their investigation based on new information. Someone leaked documents about coordinated trading activity. Do you know anything about that? Victoria smiled. I might have shared some files with the journalist. Jesus Christ, Victoria. That could be seen as obstruction, or it could be seen as whistleblowing. Depends on what the documents show. Her attorney was silent for a moment. What are we dealing with here? Corporate conspiracy, stock manipulation, coordinated fraud by board members and executives. It's all going to come out tomorrow. You should have consulted with me before. I should have done a lot of things differently. But I'm done asking permission. I'm going on offense. She hung up before he could argue. Her phone rang again immediately, a number she didn't recognize. She answered. Miss Hale, this is Detective Raymond Park with the FBI's White Collar Crime Division. We'd like to speak with you about some documents that came to our attention this morning. Would you be willing to come in for an interview? Victoria's heart raced. Am I under arrest? No, ma'am, we're just gathering information. But if you have evidence relevant to our investigation, we'd like to hear from you directly. I'll come in, but I want immunity for cooperation. I can't promise that right now, but if what you're saying is true, we'll work with the U.S. Attorney's Office. They scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. Victoria hung up and sat back, processing. The FBI was involved now. This had escalated beyond a corporate scandal. People were going to face criminal charges, possibly including her, if they decided she'd been complicit, even unknowingly. But she had the truth. And for the first time in her career, she was willing to bet everything on the truth being enough. She borrowed a coat from Ethan's closet. He told her to take whatever she needed and ventured back outside. The walk to her apartment took 40 minutes through snow-clogged streets. By the time she arrived, she was exhausted, freezing, and more determined than she'd ever been. Her apartment looked exactly as she'd left it 12 hours ago. Spotless, expensive, empty. She packed a bag with clothes and documents, grabbed her backup hard drives, and left. She couldn't stay here. Too many ghosts, too much of the person she used to be. Instead, she checked into a small hotel 3 blocks from Ethan's apartment. Nothing fancy. Clean room, functional Wi-Fi, coffee maker. It cost $60 a night, a fraction of what she used to spend without thinking. But it felt right, appropriate for who she was becoming. She spent the afternoon with the FBI, walking them through everything she'd discovered. They recorded her statement, copied her files, asked detailed questions. Detective Park was sharp, thorough, skeptical of everyone. Victoria appreciated that. If this checks out, he said at the end, you might have just handed us the biggest corporate fraud case in Illinois in a decade. But I need to be clear, you're not off the hook yet. We'll need to verify your claims independently. I understand, I'll cooperate fully. That evening, back at the hotel, Victoria's phone exploded with calls. Her story was leaking ahead of the official publication. Business networks were picking it up. Social media was lighting up. The narrative was shifting from disgraced CEO to CEO whistleblower exposed as board conspiracy. One call stood out. A venture capitalist she'd met years ago, someone who'd passed on investing in her company initially. Victoria, I just heard. I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. I should have known something was off. It's fine. I didn't know either. Listen, I know you're in the middle of a storm, but when the dust settles, if you want to build something new, call me. Whatever you create next, I want in. Victoria was surprised to find that the offer didn't excite her. A week ago, it would have validated everything. Now it just felt like noise. I appreciate that. Let me get through the investigation first. She hung up and looked out the hotel window. The city was glowing in the twilight, lights reflecting off the snow. Somewhere out there, Ethan was probably making dinner for Marcus, reading bedtime stories, being present for the small moments that mattered. Victoria realized she'd spent 12 years chasing big moments, product launches, funding rounds, acquisition deals. She'd missed the small moments entirely, and those were the ones that actually built a life. She picked up her phone and sent a text to Ethan. Thank you for last night, for showing me what solid ground looks like. I'm going to build something on it. His response came a minute later. You already are. The article ran 2 days later. Front page above the fold with a headline that made Victoria's chest tight. Tech billionaire exposes corporate coup. How board members orchestrated a multi-billion-dollar theft. Sarah Brennan had done thorough work. She'd verified every document, interviewed anonymous sources within Hale Industries, traced the money flow from the hedge fund to the conspirators. The story was devastating. By noon, 3 board members had resigned. By evening, the SEC had frozen the stock purchase and launched a formal investigation into Gerald Myers and Patricia Chen. Victoria watched it unfold from her hotel room, eating takeout Chinese food and fielding calls from attorneys, journalists, and former colleagues. Some apologized, some asked for comment. Some just wanted to be on the right side of history now that the narrative had shifted. She ignored most of them. She had a different focus now. 3 weeks later, the criminal charges were filed. Gerald Myers, Patricia Chen, David Rosenberg, and 2 other board members were indicted on securities fraud, conspiracy, and wire fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. Emails, financial transfers, time-stamped access logs showing Patricia had used Victoria's credentials to authorize fraudulent trades. The trial would take months, maybe years, but the public vindication was immediate. Headlines now read, "Hale vindicated in board betrayal exposed." Victoria's frozen assets were released. Her reputation, while damaged, was being rebuilt. But Victoria didn't go back to Hale Industries. The board offered, the investors begged, the employees petitioned. She declined everything. "I built that company once," she told a reporter who asked why. "I don't need to prove I can do it again. I need to prove I can build something different." What she built was smaller, a consulting firm that helped other companies identify internal fraud and structural vulnerabilities. She hired Ethan as her first full-time engineer. He was reluctant. He'd gotten comfortable with the janitor job, the predictable hours, but she convinced him. "You told me your skills don't disappear," she said. "Time to use them." They worked out of a shared office space in Ethan's neighborhood. Marcus would come by after daycare, sometimes doing homework at a corner desk, while Victoria and Ethan analyzed corporate structures for clients. It wasn't glamorous, the revenue was a fraction of what Victoria used to manage, but it was real, it was hers, it was built on truth. 6 months after the snowstorm, Victoria sold her high-rise apartment and bought a 3-bedroom townhouse 2 blocks from Ethan's place. She learned her neighbors' names. She helped shovel sidewalks after storms. She started showing up to things, block parties, school fundraisers, community meetings. One Saturday morning, she met Ethan and Marcus at the park, the same park Marcus had wanted to visit the morning after the storm. It was spring now. Snow long melted, flowers blooming in the beds along the path. Marcus ran ahead to the playground. Victoria and Ethan walked slowly, coffee in hand, watching him play. "You ever regret it?" Ethan asked. "Giving up the empire?" Victoria thought about it. "No. I regret building something that could be stolen that easily, but I don't regret losing it. Turns out I needed to lose it to find this." "This?" He gestured around. The park, the neighborhood, the ordinary Saturday morning. "A life that's actually mine. Not a performance, not a brand, just real." Ethan nodded. "Marcus asked me yesterday when you're coming over for dinner again. He wants to show you his new train set. Tell him tomorrow. I'll bring dessert." They sat on a bench watching Marcus navigate the jungle gym with the careful concentration of a 3-year-old testing his limits. Victoria felt the sun on her face, warm after the long winter. She thought about that night in the lobby, falling on ice, being caught by a man who had every reason to ignore her but chose to help instead. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said. "Sure. That night in the lobby, why did you really help me? You said it was paying forward what someone did for you, but there's more to it, isn't there?" Ethan smiled slightly. "You want the real answer? Always. I helped you because I saw someone who'd forgotten they were human. You were so wrapped up in being a CEO, being a billionaire, being this public figure, you'd lost track of the person underneath. And I know what that's like. After Rachel died, I got so consumed by grief and logistics and survival that I forgot I was still Ethan. Not just a widower, not just a father. Still me." He looked at her. "I thought maybe if I could remind you that you were still Victoria, you'd remember how to save yourself." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "I think it worked." "Yeah, I think it did." Marcus ran over, demanding they come see how high he could swing. They followed him, laughing, and Victoria pushed him on the swing while Ethan spotted him on the climbing wall. It was so ordinary, so small, so perfect. That evening, back at her townhouse, Victoria opened her laptop. She'd been working on something for weeks, a framework for identifying corporate fraud early, before it metastasized. She'd be presenting it at a conference next month, not as a disgraced CEO making a comeback. Just as Victoria Hale, consultant, survivor, human. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Marcus wants pancakes tomorrow. You in?" She smiled and typed back. "I'm in." Outside her window, the neighborhood was settling into evening. Lights coming on in windows, people coming home, dogs being walked, kids being called in for dinner. The rhythm of ordinary life that Victoria had spent 12 years missing while she chased extraordinary success. She'd learned something in that snowstorm, in that lobby, in the worst night of her professional life. Success isn't never falling. It's rising when the world thinks you're finished. It's knowing the difference between empire and foundation. It's understanding that the people who catch you when you slip on ice are worth more than the ones who only knew you at the top. Winter doesn't last forever, but the lessons you learn in the coldest nights, those stay with you. Those build you. Those become the foundation for everything that comes after. Victoria closed her laptop and looked around her small townhouse. No marble lobby, no glass tower, no empire. Just a home, just a life, just enough. And for the first time in 12 years, that felt like enough.